Greetings, brothers and sisters of the left-hand path. Welcome to Pluto Sophia. Today is Wednesday, May 27th, 2026, and I am your host, Dr. Murphy. And in today's video, I'm going to be talking about the tarot of manipulation and dark psychology through the Minor Arcana. Manipulation is not something that we can escape or deny. It is ingrained in human psychology, and it has been there since we've been here. Long before things like behavioral psychology, humans already studied influence. The sophists of ancient Greece had rhetoric. Kings employ symbolism to maintain their power and manipulate the masses. Priests use psychodrama and emotional theater. Philosophers study persuasion. Generals study perception. And these human psychological patterns are apparent within the tarot, because the tarot contains within its symbolism the archetypes of human behavior. So tonight we're going to examine human manipulation through the Minor Arcana, and in particular look at such things as psychology, history, philosophy, symbolism. And to do this, we're going to be using a 6-card tarot spread with 6 positions, which are the mask, the method, the weakness exploited, the hidden motivation, the outcome, and the antidote. All right, so let us get to card 1, the mask. And here we have the King of Cups, which is an excellent beginning because the King of Cups displays emotional composure, which is important because a master manipulator or influencer should not come off as aggressive. Rather, they should be composed. True power is composed. Effective manipulators psychologically are rarely emotionally uncontrolled. Rather, they are cool, calm, and calculating, observant, and measured. Robert Cialdini is an American psychologist who studies influence and persuasion. One of the principles that he's developed is that of liking. And I believe that the King of Cups corresponds very well with the principle of liking. So this principle tells us that we tend to like and follow and be more easily influenced by those that seem emotionally familiar to us, those that come across as charismatic and genuine, who appear to be trustworthy and grounded, down to earth, and those who remain calm under pressure. Emotional regulation and composure is power. Julius Caesar understood this, that to have political authority, you needed not just the military, but also emotional theater. It's all about remaining calm under pressure. One of the oldest principles of manipulation is that people mistake emotional composure with wisdom. So it actually doesn't matter if you are knowledgeable or wise in this sense with what we're talking about here. It's just that you appear to be so. And the easiest way to do that is to remain calm, to control your emotions. Whoever controls their emotions controls the room. And the King of Cups is all about controlling that atmosphere of emotion and therefore controlling the room. Now, card 2, this position is that of the method. And here we have the 7 of Swords. The 7 of Swords is a card of strategy. However, the strategy employed here is rarely one of direct confrontation. Rather, it is creating power, which allows for influence and manipulation through an asymmetry of power, right? Because all that is required is an asymmetry to have an advantage. What this means is just knowing a little bit more than others, revealing a little bit less than what you know. You're controlling the supply of information, and this is what governments and institutions have done throughout all of human history to maintain their power. You reveal less than what you actually know, and you control the supply of information. It's about having hidden knowledge, knowledge that you call forbidden or even occult. And through doing this, you understand more than others. Diplomacy, espionage, politics, seduction, negotiation, even things like poker, right? It's all about playing your cards right, playing your cards tight to the vest. Sun Tzu, who wrote The Art of War, said that all warfare is based on deception. So centuries before modern psychology, we have the Seven of Swords, and this card is teaching us that gaining more power or having influence over others or being able to manipulate others isn't necessarily always about just learning more or gaining more knowledge or more wisdom. It's more so about controlling that information, and in that sense, beginning to employ deception. So notice with the Seven of Swords here, his movement is indirect. And this is because he is avoiding open conflict. Manipulators are not always obvious in what they're doing or what their plan is. A smart manipulator will try to actually avoid direct conflict, and they will never openly assert dominance. And they do this through omission or the bias of omission, right? You're not necessarily lying, but you're not relinquishing everything that you have or that you don't. Selective honesty, choosing what you disclose. Emotional baiting, triangulation. So this is where you gang up on a victim by bringing in a second or third party to agree with you and make the target feel like they are a minority and therefore that they are wrong. Strategic silence, framing narratives. So again, manipulation is not just about manipulating people. Well, I mean, it is about manipulating the people, but through manipulating the information, the story, the narrative, the atmosphere. For example, Edward Bernays knew that humans are not rational, rather they are symbolic. And so what he did was he used psychology to engineer public opinion, and he tied his products to identity and status and emotional desire. So this is not rational, of course, but the Seven of Swords is about exploiting the irrational side of humans. It is a card of even institutionalized manipulation, and it ties in very much even with modern advertising, as we see with Edward Bernays. Okay, now we move to card 3. This is the weakness exploited, and here we have the Four of Pentacles. This is a card of attachment and fear of loss. So manipulators are searching for emotional scarcity in their victims because they know any kind of scarcity is a vulnerability in whomever it is they're trying to manipulate. So back to the psychologist Cialdini, another one of his principles is that of scarcity, which can be used to gain influence over others. Because he also talked about that humans are irrational and they have this irrational, incredible, intense fear of loss, whether it's a loss of a relationship, a social status, a loss of validation, a loss of security, identity. And so manipulation succeeds during periods of instability. And that's often when you will see somebody rise up to power because the society at that time is going through an unstable period where the masses of people are scared of losing something important to them, their freedom, their identity, their families, their lives, their jobs. The frightened mind is much easier to direct and manipulate. The lonely mind is easier to attach to and the desperate mind is easier to control. So all great political movements take advantage of these irrational mental states in the people. The frightened mind, the lonely mind, the desperate mind. A great example of this is economic instability. During periods of economic instability, the people are increasingly vulnerable to authority and emotional narratives. The Four of Pentacles is teaching us that manipulation enters through fear, especially fear of losing what we cling to psychologically. Okay, now we move to card 4, the hidden motivation, and here we have the Nine of Swords. And this is what is happening beneath the surface. And with the Nine of Swords here, this card is pointing to increasing anxiety that is building beneath the surface of what is apparent. There is this fear of inner fragmentation, psychological torment. Now, what's interesting here is that we can take a look at the manipulator here and understand that they are also not invulnerable or as stable as we may think they are, because we keep talking about their target and who they're manipulating. But exactly what kind of person becomes an unscrupulous manipulator? And often people are drawn to this because they themselves are emotionally vulnerable and probably internally unstable. So Dr. Carl Jung talked about us having unconscious insecurities that must compensate themselves through external behavior that is exaggerated. So if you feel insecure mentally, or even unconsciously, as Dr. Jung would say, maybe you're not even aware of it, you try and compensate for that by going like way too far in the other direction, developing a God complex or something like this. The psychologist Alfred Adler talked about, he studied inferiority, which leads to a need for power and control as well. And it's pretty much with Jung and Adler, what they're telling us is that there's this attempt to escape the weakness by overcompensating. Okay, so for example, if we look at somebody like Joseph Stalin, somebody who had incredible power, incredible status. However, this guy was just incredibly paranoid. He distrusted everybody. He had an obsession with control. However, his public image, which he put out to the masses, was that of strength, certainty, stability. But he had this constant, profound fear. So the Nine of Swords correlates with manipulation, but a manipulation that is psychologically unstable. And it does not necessarily equate to mastery. All right, let's move into card 5. This is the outcome. Here we have the Five of Swords. This is victory, but without harmony. This is very Machiavellian. So Niccolo Machiavelli, he actually warned rulers of the time to be careful not to become hated, because excessive manipulation, right, you overstep, and your power can become destabilized. This is the tragedy of the Five of Swords. Excessive manipulation destabilizes power. So what Machiavelli was warning the leaders about was that, manipulation can achieve dominance, influence, and victory in the short term. However, psychologically, potentially and eventually, trust is going to collapse. Relationships become transactional. So everything just becomes very cold, dead. There's no real trust. There's no real love or liking anymore. And just all in all, there's this increasing sense of paranoia, which leads to increasing isolation for the manipulator, the leader. And so something like genuine intimacy becomes impossible because every instruction or every interaction becomes cold and businesslike and strategic. So the Five of Swords is a card ultimately of psychological erosion, however, one that is disguised as success. Okay, the final card, final position, the antidote. Here we have the Queen of Pentacles. With the King of Cups and the other cards of manipulation, we're dealing a lot with pathos. So you're really tugging on the heartstrings of the populace. You're really manipulating their emotions. But with the Queen of Pentacles, so this is an earth card. She is grounded. She is connected more with logos, which means dealing more with logic. So the antidote is earthly groundedness. The antidote is emotional stability, realizing your self-worth, embodying your own self, becoming more practical and pragmatic, applying yourself, rediscovering your own ability, your psychological strength, your own resilience. See, before, with so much emotion, so much pathos, you have this growing emotional hunger, which is going to equate with a growing susceptibility to manipulation. However, with Pentacles and the Queen of Pentacles, you have increasing sovereignty. So sovereignty means having your own power, your own liberty and independence, being able to take care of your own self. This is going to decrease the possibility of manipulation, decrease the possibility of destabilization. Socrates talked about this too, having self-knowledge, which decreases the illusion. Aristotle talked about having virtue, balance, and discipline, which does not equate with emotional excess, nor does it equate with pathos. Because pathos is what we see all the time in advertising, because it appeals, it's an argument that appeals to emotion. And emotional minds are not rational minds. So it's all about coming back to the earth, embracing your own sovereignty. And this is the antidote to manipulation. Okay, I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Have an infernally blessed day.